Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. Australia cancels the visa of a far-right Israeli lawmaker from Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition, who was set to visit this month. However, the lawmaker has advocated against Palestinian statehood and calls for Tel Aviv to annex the West Bank. Myanmar will hold the initial phase of its general election on December 28th, marking the first vote in the war-torn country in nearly 5 years, which critics have already derided as a sham. Thailand will launch an 18-month pilot program allowing foreign visitors to convert cryptocurrencies into baht for local payments, as the government pushes to revive its crucial tourism sector. Air Canada suspends its full-year profit expectations as its fleet of hundreds of planes remain grounded after striking flight attendants refused a government-backed order to get back to work. And Cambridge University Press says words popularized by Gen Z and Gen Alpha, including skibidi and delulu, are among 6,000 new entries added to the online edition of the Cambridge Dictionary over the past year. We begin in Washington, where after the highly anticipated meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin last week, Washington is now set to host Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders for talks on a peace deal. Zelensky will meet Donald Trump in the Oval Office later today, followed by a larger session in the White House with European Commission President, NATO Secretary General, and leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland. Now, ahead of the meeting, Zelensky said he shared a strong desire to end the Ukraine war quickly and reliably.
We all share a strong desire to end this war quickly and reliably. And peace must be lasting. Ukrainians are fighting for their land, for their independence. Russia must end this war, which it started. And I hope that our joint strength with America, with our European friends, will force Russia into a real peace.
Notably, Trump's summit in Alaska did not produce a ceasefire, but led to discussions about possible security guarantees for Ukraine. It also important to note European leaders and Zelensky were left out of the meeting. And since the summit, Trump is now back in alignment with Moscow's position that a ceasefire is not required before final peace talks. Now, on Sunday, the U.S. president took to social media, putting the onus on Zelensky to make concessions and declaring that Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014, would not return to Ukraine and that NATO membership was also off the table. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also said on Sunday that a ceasefire was still possible, but that the best way to end the conflict was through a full peace deal.
The only way to finalize a peace agreement is you have to have both sides agree to it and both sides of it involved. How many times have we heard from the Ukrainians and from others, there is nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine? Well, Ukraine wasn't at the meeting, but this was a very important meeting. Now, ultimately, if there isn't a peace agreement, if there isn't an end of this war, the president's been clear there are going to be consequences, but we're trying to avoid that.
For now, Russia reportedly demands Ukrainian withdrawal from Kherson, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Donetsk regions that Moscow has annexed during its invasion. And it also wants Ukraine to halt its military mobilization and abandon its NATO ambitions. But Kyiv has rejected such terms, saying that would force it to cede the remainder of Donetsk, where its troops hold strong defensive positions. Zelensky has also repeatedly asked for security guarantees and long-term defense support. Zelensky also continues to insist that no peace deal can legitimize occupation. European leaders have backed Kyiv's position, warning that any pressure on Ukraine to cede territory would only amount to capitulation.
Ukraine must be able to uphold its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. There can be no limitations on Ukrainian armed forces, be it cooperation with or other third countries or assistance from other third countries, no limitations for the Ukrainian armed forces. As I've often said, Ukraine must become a steel porcupine undigestible for potential invaders. With regards to any territorial questions in Ukraine, our position is clear. International borders cannot be changed by force.
Steve Wyckoff, Donald Trump's special envoy to Russia, said in an interview on Sunday that the United States and European countries could offer NATO-like security guarantees for Ukraine outside of the organization as part of a peace agreement with Russia. And now, amid the backdrop of continued negotiations, however, the war still rages on. An overnight Russian attack on a residential area in Kharkiv killed 3 people, including a toddler, and injured 19 others. Authorities say the number injured from the attack is likely to increase. So as Washington prepares to host President Zelensky alongside European leaders, it's anyone's guess which side Trump will take and if any of it moves closer to a lasting peace. And now we look at Ukraine's Donbas region, the industrial and strategic heartland in the east, and what handing such a strategic area to Russia would mean for Ukraine. The future of Donbas has become a central focus after Russian President Vladimir Putin reportedly demanded the region be handed over during his meeting with Trump in Alaska on Friday. Putin reportedly told Trump that Ukrainian forces must withdraw from Donetsk as part of any ceasefire agreement. He said Russia could halt fighting elsewhere, and if Kyiv accepted, arguing this would address the root causes of the conflict. However, President Zelensky has rejected the demand, warning that giving up Donetsk would give Russia almost complete control of Donbas and a launch pad for further attacks into Ukraine.
We will not leave Donbas. We cannot do this. Everyone forgets the first part: our territories are illegally occupied. Donbas for the Russians is a springboard for a future new offensive.
So why is the region so critical? Well, it's highly industrialized, dominated by coal mining and metallurgy. The region stretches across the Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast along Ukraine's eastern border. Its name comes from Donetsk Basin, referencing the coal-rich Donetsk Ridge and River. Donbas has been partially occupied by Russia since 2014. Around the same time, Moscow annexed Crimea. Luhansk is largely under Russian control, while Ukraine still maintains roughly 30% of Donetsk. If Donbas falls, the front line could shift roughly 80 kilometers west, opening the way towards cities like Kharkiv, Poltava, and the Dnipro. It's why Zelensky is insisting that no peace deal can include forfeiting such an important region. It holds some of Ukraine's largest coal reserves and powers much of the country's economy. In fact, when fighting first erupted in 2014, coal production dropped by more than 20%, showing just how much Ukraine relies on the region. Next is its strategic and military value, as the area forms a natural defensive line along the eastern front. Ukrainian troops have built a fortress belt of trenches, bunkers, anti-tank ditches, minefields, and fortified urban zones over the years. And finally, its symbolism is undeniable, as the region has been contested for more than a decade, with Russian-backed separatists controlling parts of it since 2014. Losing it would not only weaken Ukraine's front line, but also send a signal that Russian aggression pays off. President Zelensky has repeatedly refused to give up Donbas, insisting no peace deal can legitimize occupation. And European leaders have supported Kyiv's position, warning that ceding territory would amount to capitulation. And so as Washington hosts diplomatic talks, Donbas remains at the center of both the battlefield and international negotiations. Its industrial power, fortified defenses, and strategic location make it one of the most critical regions in the war. Two presidents, two significant engagements on American soil. One, however, felt like a stage for admiration. The other, a trial by fire. In Alaska, Vladimir Putin was greeted with applause and handshakes by Donald Trump that radiated admiration. Flashback to the Oval Office in February, however, where President Zelensky was scolded and derided, facing ridicule at every turn, struggling to even complete a sentence as President Trump constantly berated him. As the press and the world watched in horror, it was the same war that was up for discussion but the optics were starkly different. Here's more on a tale of two meetings.
Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. They should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Two presidential handshakes, two iconic public stages, two foreign leaders walking onto American soil, both tied to the same conflict. Yet what followed were two very different realities. In one frame, Putin is treated as a strategic equal, receiving praises, heaped with compliments from Trump. In the other, a wartime president finds himself pinned down. He's grilled, challenged, repeatedly shut down, and even lectured on live television. After the Alaska summit, you see the actor at the center of the war, walking out brandishing a virtual medal, almost like a soft power trophy. And the nation which is in the crossfire of war, its leader somehow is treated like he's the one pushing the world closer to a third world war.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
It's an ironic role reversal, and surreal as well. Watch the first scene in Alaska closely. Before Putin even steps forward, Trump is clapping. He smiles and stretches out his hand, eager to make contact. He leans in, nods approvingly, and gave Putin a celebratory handshake, the kind you reserve for a trusted ally. Trump seemed like he was soaked in admiration. For a man who has been in power for years and mastered the strongman playbook, at one point US troops physically even kneeled down to roll out the red carpet. Every step looked like it was designed to honor Putin. Now cut to the Oval Office footage. No red carpet, no applause. Trump's posture is visibly tightened, his face is red. He's frowning at the Ukrainian president, his fingers wagging in Zelensky's direction. There was another moment that showed the difference in chemistry. Minutes later, after Putin arrived, Trump and the Russian president drove in the same car. It was a shared ride in the beast. So one sits in Trump's limousine, laughing in the backseat, seemingly carefree. Another sits in the Oval Office, struggling to finish a sentence. At the end, no deals were signed in either of the engagements, but one left Moscow flexing, while the other left Kyiv berated and bruised. The two meetings tell a story beyond diplomacy. Think of it as a film split screen. In one room, history smiles. In the other, it frowns. One summit leaves a leader celebrated. The other leaves one tested.
And now to the Trump administration's continued and brutal crackdown on immigration, where the arrest of a Colombian TikToker by ICE agents has sparked massive outrage. Tatiana Martinez, a Colombian TikToker living in Los Angeles, was arrested last Friday on what the agency said was a prior DUI conviction. Now, Martinez, who allegedly entered the U.S. in 2022, was apprehended by federal authorities while streaming on TikTok from her vehicle. Footage shows Martinez seated in her car when federal agents approached, opened the door, and viciously yanked her from the car. She was heard screaming before being pinned to the ground, with observers calling for medical assistance as she lay both helpless and motionless. Following the incident, reports suggested that Martinez was first taken to the hospital before being moved to a detention center. And now Martinez is a popular TikToker who primarily caters to a Spanish audience. With over 37,000 followers on TikTok, she's been making videos on ICE raids that have become rampant in California since the Trump administration came back into office. Among her recent videos, she discussed the federal takeover of Washington, D.C. by Donald Trump. Her detainment has raised the ire of many, as legions describe the arrest as absolutely disgusting. One even asked how Americans could be comfortable with this, while another said he hoped karma would find its way to all ICE supporters. But not all users criticized ICE arrest. For the detractors of ICE tactics, there are those who support these abusive antics, as some have hailed the ICE arrest as against so-called illegal aliens. In fact, there are those questioning how she was allowed to stay in America for this long, while others said this is what they voted for. Immigration authorities have carried out a series of raids and are facing heightened scrutiny amid allegations of misconduct. Moreover, the administration's widespread deportations efforts have drawn strong pushback from immigration rights advocates and sparked protests across the country. In Los Angeles last week, advocacy groups occupied MacArthur Park in a 24-hour community demonstration pushing back on continued ICE raids. On foot and on wheels, large crowds rallied against family separations and communities living in fear under the administration's crackdown.
Real lives, real families are being torn apart, real people are being affected. People I know, people I see all over Los Angeles, people I see across the country. It makes me so mad. It hurts my heart, it hurts my humanity. And how can anybody turn away from this?
And as another brutal arrest sparks more outrage, authorities have not yet issued a detailed statement on Martinez's case. For now, however, she remains in federal detention while the Trump administration's immigration crackdown shows no signs of slowing down. And finally, graduation is a major milestone meant to be lauded and celebrated, but instead, in this particular instance, it opened the floodgates to hate. When NYU engineering students proudly shared their new jobs at tech giants like Google and Amazon, you think people would have cheered these bright young minds on. But instead, what these graduates got were ugly, hate-filled pushback. Here's a look at how a moment of joy became a lightning rod for hate.
What was meant to be a heartwarming celebration of student success has instead sparked a troubling wave of online racism. A video shared by New York University's Tandon School of Engineering, showcasing proud graduates revealing their job offers at major tech firms, was met with a barrage of hateful comments on social media.
Continue to be a professor here.
The video, filmed during graduation, showed an interviewer asking students about their post-college plans.
Where are you going?
Many graduates happily announced positions at global giants like Google, Amazon and IBM.
At IBM.
These roles were nothing less than symbols of their hard work and academic dedication. One student revealed that she would soon start working for Google.
You're at Google from July.
While another spoke about his new position at Amazon's Seattle office.
I just joined Amazon in Seattle and I'm going to be working there from next month onwards.
Then there were others who secured opportunities in firms like IBM and AWS.
At IBM. AWS.
Another student expressed deep excitement about his role in a robotics company in Minnesota.
A robotics company in Minnesota.
But instead of applause, the clip triggered xenophobic remarks online. Viewers, drawing assumptions from the students' accents and appearances, fixated on their perceived South Asian or Chinese heritage. The comment section on Instagram and posts on X were flooded with slurs, mocking their names, ethnicities, suggesting that foreigners were taking coveted American tech jobs. In this sea of hateful comments, there were some who credited the students. Some users quickly jumped to defend the students. One user stated that the students worked hard for this. Another pointed out the excitement in their eyes, while there were others who wished the students good luck. The backlash reflects a growing climate of anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States of America. This is particularly aimed at South Asians, amid debates over the H-1B visa program. As per reports, Indians alone account for nearly 70% of the 85,000 H-1B visas issued annually. While the program is intended to fill critical skill shortages, critics often portray it as a threat to American workers, sentiments that clearly spilled into the comments on the NYU video. What makes this incident particularly disheartening is that the nationalities of the students were never revealed. The focus was meant to be on their achievements, landing jobs at some of the world's most competitive firms. Yet their accomplishments were overshadowed by prejudice, reducing years of academic effort into fodder for racial attacks. The success of the NYU graduates should have been celebrated as a testament to perseverance, skill, and global competitiveness. Instead, it became a reminder of the persistent challenges immigrants and minorities face, even in moments of triumph. As the tech industry continues to thrive on diversity and international talent, the backlash against these students highlights a pressing question. Will society allow merit to shine through, or will prejudice continue to cloud genuine achievement?
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for tuning in.